Imagine a plant so woven into European folk medicine that grandmothers applied its bright orange sap to skin imperfections without a second thought. Today, that same herb sits forgotten in shaded corners of old gardens, labeled as nothing more than a pretty weed. The greater Celandine produced a latex so distinctively colored that medieval herbalists called it the gift of the swallows. Legend claimed the plant bloomed when swallows arrived in spring and faded when they departed in autumn. This wasn't mere botanical poetry. It was a cultural timestamp connecting human observation to nature's cycles. For centuries, European communities harvested the fresh stems, broke them open, and carefully applied the golden orange sap to warts and skin tags. The tradition passed from generation to generation and acted as routine as brewing tea. Then, the pharmaceutical age arrived with its sterile tubes and clinical trials. Traditional plant knowledge transformed into folk superstition. Dermatology offices replaced kitchen remedies. The Celandine became an ornamental curiosity, its practical history erased from modern consciousness. Yet the plant still grows, still bleeds its distinctive sap, still carries the alkaloids that made it valuable. History reveals a pattern. We don't abandon plants because they stop working. We abandon them because they can't be patented, standardized, or sold in pharmacies. The botanical name Chelidonium majus derives from the Greek word chelidon, meaning swallow. Ancient Greeks observed the plant's flowering period coincided precisely with the swallow's migration. This synchronization wasn't accidental symbolism. It represented how closely people once watched the natural world for practical information. The plant belongs to the poppy family, Papaveritae, sharing lineage with opium poppies and bloodroot. Its family connection hints at the powerful alkaloids contained within every stem and root. Breaking a fresh Celandine stem releases a bright orange-yellow latex that oxidizes to reddish-brown within minutes. This distinctive sap contains over 20 different alkaloids, primarily chelidonine, sanguinarine, and berberine. Medieval herbalists didn't understand alkaloid chemistry. They simply knew the sap worked when applied to certain skin conditions. Historical texts from the 1600s documented external applications for warts, corns, and various skin growths. The observation was empirical. Applied topically, the caustic nature of the sap caused tissue changes. Modern phytochemical analysis confirms the presence of compounds with documented antimicrobial and proteolytic properties. The distinction between folk knowledge and scientific validation often comes down to vocabulary, not efficacy. Traditional practitioners lacked laboratory equipment, but possessed centuries of observational data. Critical warning: Celandine contains toxic alkaloids that can cause liver damage, seizures, and death if consumed internally. This plant is not for internal consumption under any circumstances. The same alkaloids that made external applications effective render internal use extremely dangerous. Chelidonine acts on the central nervous system. Sanguinarine has documented hepatotoxic effects. Historical records show that internal consumption led to severe poisoning cases throughout European medical history. Medieval and Renaissance texts documented the plant's dual nature: useful externally, deadly internally. The latex can cause severe skin irritation in sensitive individuals even with external contact. Modern toxicology studies confirm significant risks associated with any form of ingestion. Several European countries have banned Celandine from internal herbal preparations due to documented liver toxicity cases. The plant's beauty and historical significance don't diminish its genuine danger. Understanding traditional use requires understanding traditional caution. Grandmothers who used Celandine sap knew to apply it sparingly, externally, and never near mucous membranes. The wisdom wasn't just in knowing what worked. The wisdom was in knowing what could kill. Celandine spread across Europe as both garden herb and opportunistic colonizer of disturbed soils. Monastery gardens cultivated it alongside other medicinal plants throughout the Middle Ages. Monks documented its external applications in herbals that circulated across monastic networks. The plant thrived in the cool, moist conditions of northern European climates. It naturalized so successfully that many regions considered it native, despite its likely Mediterranean origins. English cottage gardens maintained Celandine patches specifically for treating common skin complaints. The bright yellow four-petaled flowers made it attractive enough to tolerate in ornamental spaces. European settlers brought Celandine seeds to North America in the 1600s. The herb escaped cultivation immediately, establishing wild populations across the northeastern United States and Canada. Today, it grows along shaded roadsides in moist woods and around old homestead sites. Finding Celandine often indicates historical human habitation. The plant marks where gardens once flourished and grandmothers once harvested medicinal herbs. Its persistence demonstrates remarkable adaptability to diverse temperate environments. Celandine requires minimal care, spreads readily through seed, and returns reliably each spring. The chemistry of Celandine reads like a catalog of potent compounds. Chelidonium, the primary alkaloid, shows structural similarity to morphine. Sanguinarine exhibits antimicrobial activity against various bacterial strains. Berberine, also found in golden seal and barberry, has documented effects on cellular metabolism. Copticine and stylopine round out the major alkaloid profile. These compounds exist in highest concentration in the root system, followed by the latex, then leaves. The bright orange color of the sap comes from the concentration of these alkaloids. Chemical analysis shows alkaloid content varies by season, peaking in spring during active growth. This seasonal variation explains why traditional harvesting focused on spring and early summer. The caustic nature of the fresh latex results from these alkaloid concentrations. When applied to keratinized tissue like warts, the alkaloids cause protein breakdown and tissue necrosis. This mechanism, while crude by modern standards, achieved the desired effect: removal of unwanted skin growths. Modern pharmaceutical wart treatments use salicylic acid or cryotherapy. Traditional practice used Celandine latex. Both approaches target tissue destruction. The chemistry differs, but the principle remains constant. Growing Celandine requires almost no effort, which paradoxically makes it controversial. The plant self-seeds aggressively, spreads through rhizomes, and tolerates shade that defeats most garden plants. It thrives in moist, humus-rich soil, but survives in surprisingly dry conditions. Partial to full shade suits it best, mimicking its natural habitat of forest edges and woodland clearings. Celandine reaches 12 to 30 inches in height, producing lobed blue-green leaves with a distinctive waxy coating. The yellow flowers appear from April through September, each lasting only a few days. Seed pods develop rapidly, splitting to release small black seeds with white eliosomes. Ants disperse these seeds, carrying them to new locations attracted by the fatty eliosome appendages. This ant dispersal mechanism, called myrmecochory, ensures the plant spreads beyond its original location. Once established, Celandine returns year after year from its perennial rootstock. Some gardeners curse its persistence. Others appreciate a plant that requires zero maintenance and survives complete neglect. The rebellion isn't in growing Celandine. The rebellion is in growing something useful that supermarkets can't sell you. Traditional application of Celandine sap followed specific protocols refined over generations. Practitioners harvested fresh stems during morning hours when sap flow was strongest. Breaking the stem released the orange latex immediately. The sap was applied directly to the target skin growth, avoiding healthy surrounding tissue. Applications occurred daily, sometimes twice daily, until the growth darkened and fell off. The process typically required 1 to 3 weeks of consistent treatment. Historical texts emphasize the importance of fresh sap. Dried plant material lost the latex entirely, rendering it useless for this specific application. This requirement for fresh material meant Celandine had to grow locally, in gardens or nearby wild spaces. The practice embedded people in direct relationship with living plants rather than stored medicine. Modern dermatological removal of skin tags involves freezing, cutting, or burning. Traditional practice involved patient repeated application of plant latex. Both approaches recognize that unwanted skin growths require tissue destruction for removal. The chemistry changed. The principle didn't. Contemporary research has isolated and studied Celandine's alkaloids extensively. Pharmaceutical companies have synthesized some of these compounds for various applications. Berberine supplements derived from multiple plant sources, including Celandine, appear in health stores worldwide. Yet the whole plant remains largely forgotten in practical application. This represents the standard pattern of modern botanical appropriation. Extract the active compounds. Patent the synthesis process. Discard the plant. Celandine can't be patented because it grows freely in countless locations. Anyone with a shaded garden patch can cultivate their own supply. The plant's very accessibility excludes it from commercial pharmaceutical interest. Meanwhile, over-the-counter wart treatments containing salicylic acid sell for premium prices. The active mechanism, tissue destruction through chemical caustic action, remains essentially identical. The packaging and marketing differ. The price certainly differs. The chemistry? Remarkably similar. Appreciating Celandine's traditional use requires understanding both its effectiveness and its danger. The plant deserves respect, not casual experimentation. Internal consumption remains absolutely prohibited due to severe hepatotoxicity and neurotoxicity. Even external applications can cause skin irritation, burns, or allergic reactions in sensitive individuals. The fresh latex stains skin and clothing a persistent orange-brown. Contact with eyes or mucous membranes causes severe irritation. Traditional knowledge included these cautions, passed from experienced practitioners to novices. Modern rediscovery often lacks this contextual safety information. The Internet contains dangerous misinformation about Celandine's internal use. Historical documentation of internal consumption doesn't constitute modern medical recommendation. People died from Celandine poisoning throughout its history of use. It was simply the available option. Appreciating ancestral botanical knowledge doesn't require romanticizing its risks. The plant taught humans about alkaloid chemistry through painful, sometimes fatal lessons. Celandine represents something larger than a single herb's historical application. It symbolizes the lost infrastructure of local plant-based self-sufficiency. Grandmothers who grew Celandine didn't rely on dermatology appointments or pharmacy visits for common skin concerns. They maintained direct relationships with useful plants growing in accessible locations. This knowledge network operated outside commercial systems. It required no prescription, no insurance, no corporate intermediary. The pharmaceutical age didn't just change how we treat skin tags. It changed our relationship with plants, with self-reliance, with local ecological knowledge. Celandine still grows wild across North America and Europe. Its alkaloids remain as potent as they were in medieval gardens. The chemistry didn't change. Our cultural amnesia did. Growing Celandine in a modern garden isn't about rejecting medical science. It's about maintaining botanical literacy. It's about remembering that useful plants exist outside pharmaceutical supply chains. The swallows still return each spring. The golden sap still flows. The question is whether anyone still remembers why it mattered. Every Celandine plant growing in a shaded garden corner represents a living archive of botanical history. The species hasn't changed genetically in any meaningful way since medieval times. The same alkaloid profile that medieval monks documented persists in every modern stem. This biological continuity connects us directly to ancestral practice. Unlike written records that decay or digital files that corrupt, living plants preserve information through their very existence. Celandine doesn't need human cultivation to survive. It thrives in wild spaces, along old stone walls, in forgotten corners of abandoned properties. This persistence ensures the plant's chemistry remains available, regardless of whether humans remember its traditional applications. The knowledge may fade. The plant doesn't. This represents a form of resilience that transcends human cultural amnesia. Botanical libraries don't burn. They simply wait for someone to remember how to read them. Celandine asks nothing from us. It continues its spring bloom, produces its orange latex, disperses its seeds through ant partnerships. The question isn't whether the plant survives. The question is whether we remember enough to recognize what survives with it.